Hey, welcome in, folks. Great to see you on this Tuesday. Got an update for you on what is now an ongoing major southern winter storm. In fact, we can now call it a major Gulf Coast blizzard with newly issued blizzard warnings through sections of Louisiana just issued not long ago. So a very historic situation unfolding from Texas through Louisiana, and those impacts this afternoon going to work into Georgia, the Carolinas, Florida, Alabama, and potentially even into parts of the mid-Atlantic. Now, if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Gerald. I'm a meteorology major at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. And if you haven't already, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell for the latest notifications. Also want to thank everyone that tuned into the live last night. We had a blast. It was a fun time and looking forward to doing it again sometime soon. All right, folks, with that said, let's go ahead and jump right on into the data. And you can see right next to me, radar loop beginning to fill in with that wintry weather, that blue being snowfall. And it's just not often you see areas like Houston, San Antonio, Lafayette, New Orleans now even trying to get in on the snow, even up towards Hattiesburg. Just kind of a once-in-a-lifetime radar loop for some folks down that way. And all of this kind of mess that you're seeing here is eventually going to spread up towards the Carolinas this afternoon. Places like Columbia, Florence, Augusta, down into Macon, Georgia, into Dothan, Alabama, going to start to feel the impacts. And maybe as far north as the Charlotte area, Greensboro, potentially the I-85 corridor of upstate South Carolina, even going to try to get in on the snowy fun. But where the real concerns will be is at the coastline, where a full-blown winter storm is going to unfold from likely Virginia Beach down through Kitty Hawk, Wilmington, and then especially down towards the Carolina coastline into Charleston, Savannah, and up towards the Myrtle Beach area. Going to see big time snow and potentially icy impacts as well in that area. Now, folks, newest kind of watches, warnings, and advisories here from the National Weather Service. Let me zoom it out a little bit so you can kind of read some of those. And this is a historic thing unfolding here. You see this tiny little dot of orange down here? Yeah, these are blizzard warnings. Yes, not winter storm warnings, but blizzard warnings right down here into the Texas, Louisiana coastline. Just not something you see very often. In fact, something we've never seen. These are the first ever issued blizzard warnings for this area. The National Weather Service out of Lake Charles kind of mentioned that this morning in their forecast discussion. So truly historic things happening. And you could drive from the Mexico border all the way along the Gulf Coast and then all the way up into Jacksonville, Florida. So the entire Gulf Coast from Texas to Jacksonville, which I know Jacksonville isn't on the Gulf Coast, but into the Big Bend of Florida. Either way, that entire area under a winter storm warning. And now those advisories being issued for areas further north, like Charlotte, into Columbia, back down into Atlanta, up towards Raleigh, entering those winter weather advisory criteria, as we've seen a northern shift a little bit here in the precipitation shield overnight. And the reason for that is what we're seeing in the upper levels that has changed. Now, we talked about this all week. I told you it wasn't over till it's over. We see changes all the time. And if you watched the live last night with Mitch West and I, we kind of were watching the model data come in together at the same time. And we could kind of begin to see really as early as yesterday morning that this was going to start to trend a little more beefed up for some folks. And this is the reason why. So I kind of broke this down last night. I'll break it down again. We basically kind of have a double barrel trough in a way, meaning we've got two separate areas of distinct vorticity maximums as we kind of have enhanced troughing right here over the St. Louis area, and then another area of enhanced troughing back down towards El Paso. So as I always talk about on the channel, on the right-hand side of these troughs, so I'll go ahead and put an X again over the center of kind of these troughs. On the right-hand side where I have these circles drawn, this is where we get divergence in the atmosphere, or basically just lift. And we're getting that lift over Texas and Louisiana. In fact, I'll draw it even a little bit better here. Really right into this area is where we're seeing the lift. This is that divergence aloft, and that's why we've got all of this snow and ice forming and even overperforming. We're getting even more lift than maybe the models kind of projected in their snow maps, and that is leading to more precipitation. Now, what has changed for the Carolinas and why we're seeing maybe a higher end snow chance for places like Columbia, Charlotte, Augusta than it looked like about 24 or 48 hours ago is on the opposite side of the troughs. And again, I'll put the X's back over them. On this backside, we get what we call upper level convergence or sinking motion, and that prevents the rising motion, and that creates high pressure and prevents moisture from forming. What it looked like maybe a day or two ago, and still is happening just to a lesser extent, is this area of convergence on the backside of our upper trough was going to try to kind of move down and squeeze off the divergence here from our southern trough. But what has happened recently in the runs is this northern piece of energy, by the time we get to the Carolinas, is a little bit further north and a little bit more backed off. So that upper level unfavorable conditions are really now back up into Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee. But the favorable conditions, or the lift, now extending further north towards the I-85 corridor. And again, that's kind of why we're seeing some of those last second changes. I know it seems like a big change, and I get it. If you're in a place like Charlotte a day ago, there was basically nothing in the forecast from many meteorologists. Now maybe you're waking up, maybe they're bumping up the totals a little bit. You're waking up to a winter weather advisory and you're wondering what happened. Well, this is only about a 50-mile shift from what it was. It's just whenever you're over these big populated areas and such a little amount of precipitation difference can make a big deal. That's why we always track these winter storms up to the last second in the south and really everywhere, but the south specifically, where it's a lot bigger of a deal if a forecast goes wrong compared to maybe some of the lake effect areas that you're a lot more equipped to deal with it. All right, so latest model guidance. This is our NAM model, and kind of coming in at about 8 a.m. this morning is what you're seeing here. This winter storm is going to continue into the Texas Gulf Coast up through Louisiana. We're already seeing accumulating snow down into the I-10 corridor of Louisiana. Well, it's going to get even heavier this afternoon. You're going to see that snow continue to pile up, and wait till I show you the totals forecast in a second. That's when things are going to get pretty crazy. So we'll move it ahead a little bit more into time by this afternoon, about noon. Still snowing good into likely New Orleans, maybe some sleet mixing in into Baton Rouge, Lafayette, Opelousas, really that entire I-10 corridor, beginning to wind down in areas like Houston by later this morning into early afternoon. But it's at that same time that this kind of tongue of moisture, if you will, begins to work up north. Areas like Atlanta, Montgomery, Auburn, going to likely start to see some snowflakes falling right around 2 p.m. And this is something I'm worried about for areas like Atlanta and even up into the Greenville, Spartanburg, Charlotte area. The forecast here, again, was really for not much, maybe flurries. Now we're seeing a slight uptick in that precipitation, and it's at a bad time. It's right around rush hour. This is 2 p.m. Let me move this map ahead into about 3, 4, and we'll even stop it at 5 p.m. Eastern time. We've got a winter mess from the Florida Panhandle at this point, winding down in Louisiana by this evening. But if you're watching anywhere from Charlotte to Greenville, Spartanburg, especially the southern upstate of South Carolina, back into the Atlanta suburbs, especially the southern suburbs of Atlanta, into Augusta, Columbia, South Carolina, this is rush hour mayhem that could unfold. So I'm hoping, schools and businesses will be out by this time, but big places like Charlotte, where the forecast wasn't for a lot, even places like Columbia and Augusta, this could cause big problems for that rush hour commute tonight. So go ahead and prepare now. Now, this could also backtrend a little bit. Places like Charlotte might not end up getting a lot, but it's better to play it safe. If there's anything we've learned from instances like 2014 Atlanta, it's better to play it safe so you're not stuck on the road without food or water or something like that for an extended amount of time. So that's kind of the concern today. And something we're going to watch. Now, further into this evening, places like Charlotte, Greenville, Spartanburg, Atlanta, if it does snow, it likely won't last forever. It's probably going to be a couple hours of a burst of snow, but the ground is going to be so cold and these snow ratios are going to be so high, that's enough time to get an inch or two of snow on the ground. And this is not going to be a slushy snow that's kind of half melted on the road. No, this is going to be pure fluffy snow that'll be there and will not melt during the overnight. So just, be prepared for that if this event does overperform like this model is showing. And then snowing still good into southern Alabama, into the Florida Panhandle, an icy, snowy mess. Places like Destin, Panama City, going to see historic levels of snow out of this. And I get folks in the north are probably laughing at the word historic, but you get 3 inches of snow on the Gulf Coast of Florida. Yeah, that's historic. That's just something we don't really see. Now, into the overnight, this is when we get into full-blown winter storm mode through the Carolina coastline, southern Georgia, up through the Outer Banks. You can see that blue, that purple, and that pink really mixing in here, indicating those high-end chances for heavy snow, not even just normal snow, but heavy snow. And all of that continues into the overnight. This is 11 p.m., still snowing in Columbia. So a place like Columbia, talk about the chance to overperform. Yesterday morning, the models were pointing basically to nothing. Now they're saying maybe a 5 to 6 hour window of some good moderate snow. Yeah, that could pile up to the most snow we've seen since at least 2022, maybe even before that. By a little bit. And you can see all of that snow potential continuing and really looking like a classic 2014 style winter storm here into the Outer Banks, the Low Country, into Jacksonville, Florida. And then this is 6 a.m. tomorrow, 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 10 a.m., and then we kind of finally wind things down a little bit. Now, let me show you something else. This is going to be kind of a fancy meteorology map, so let me explain it to you. Basically, this is temperature advection above our heads at about 700 millibars. Let me get it back to the right time frame, sorry. Yeah, let me back it up right into here. This is the important stuff. So this is basically a map that's showing me where we have the best chance to overperform this. I'm not going to get super detailed on what everything means here. We'll be here all day. But basically, this is just where we're getting extra oomph or lift above our head to really start that snow process. And you see these areas of kind of purple that we get kind of around here into the upstate and back into the Augusta area. That's an area of frontogenesis, or an area of that extra lift. And this is where we could overperform. And you see that getting into the Atlanta area by this afternoon. We could get a quick burst of snow out of that, and then trying to sneak up into the Spartanburg, Greenville, Anderson area, but especially point south, Lawrence, Newberry, into Columbia, even Charlotte, trying to get into that right around this evening. Could get a quick umph of snow, and then it really hangs on into the Midlands of South Carolina for a while. And that I-20 to I-95 corridor here in the Carolinas, you're under this frontogenesis band for potentially quite some time, and that's where we could really up the snowfall totals and get higher in totals than expected. And then on the backside of this too, look at down here into southern Alabama, Georgia, Florida. You also are going to see those higher precipitation rates due to that warm air advection above our heads. And then it gets on out of here by tomorrow morning. But that's going to be a key in the forecast here to watch as we continue to monitor the situation. Now, let's go ahead and talk about snowfall totals. Kind of take a look at a couple different models and a couple different outputs. This is the HRRR model that just ran from this morning, and this is basically a total snowfall map. So depending on when you're watching this, let's say you've already gotten 3 inches of snow in Lafayette, then 3 of that has already happened from that 7.6. So keep that in mind. But this is what we're talking about when we say historic snow. Latest high resolution rapid refresh models showing the potential for half a foot of snow from Baton Rouge to Lafayette, potentially 3 to 5 inches down into the New Orleans area, Slidell, into Gulfport, Hattiesburg showing higher in snow potential. Also, if you're watching from Jackson to Alexandria back into Meridian, let me know how much snow has fallen, because the more snow that falls up there, the better sign that is for snow lovers back into the Carolinas. So would love to hear that in the comments, and really anybody watching anywhere, let me know what you're seeing. That's really going to help us kind of figure out this nowcasting portion of the forecast. Now, that's the HRRR model. The NAM model, a little bit further north with the precip shield, and I think that could be onto something. And this is why it's such a tough forecast to somewhere like Hattiesburg. Look at the HRRR model. It says about 2.8 inches. The NAM says nearly half a foot of snow. So we still got some disagreement in the models. The NAM going a little bit heavier on that northern trend, the HRRR keeping it back. But if we go back to radar, like I showed you earlier, and I guess we can, why not? I will say this precip shield is a lot further north than maybe the HRRR has originally kind of initialized. So that's something to keep in mind here as we watch these totals come on in. All right, let's go ahead and move it over to kind of areas of Mississippi and Alabama. This, the latest NAM model once more. Folks, this is crazy stuff. I mean, the NAM here is pointing to the potential of half a foot to a foot of snow in, yes, Mobile, Alabama, up to Monroeville, down into Columbus, Georgia. Now, will it be exactly this heavy? Probably not. This is probably overdone a little bit, but definitely an area of 3 to 5 inches, I would say, is quite likely in there, and that could overperform. That's the NAM model. The HRRR model, also showing big totals in areas like Mobile and Dothan, but see how it's further south? This is why this is such a tough forecast. Montgomery could be near 2 inches of snow, or absolutely nothing, depending on what model you buy here. Columbus, Georgia, half a foot of snow, or absolutely nothing. Now, I think reality is probably somewhere in between that. For areas like this, but you get the point on why this is such a difficult forecast. And I'll add even areas up here into Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, back down into this area of kind of central Alabama. You're not out of the woods either if this precipitation shield overperforms back here towards Jackson. I mean, you'd be next in line for it. So again, something to watch as we continue to monitor the trends here. But either way, historic snow likely here into southern Alabama, into southwestern Georgia, and into southern Mississippi and the Florida Panhandle. Speaking of Florida, let's take a look at this. Again, talk about crazy model runs. The HRRR showing historic snow once again through the Florida Panhandle. Now, like I said, I think this is overdone a little bit. Well, that's the HRRR. I'll show you the NAM as well. Here it is. You see, again, the difference. The HR's just so much further south than the NAM. And again, I think reality's somewhere kind of in between. So I would go with the HR for snowfall footprint, but kind of back off these totals pretty significantly. I think Tallahassee is going to be more like 1 to 3 inches, maybe 2 to 4, 2 to 5 in a best case scenario. Same story for really just the entire western Florida panhandle. Then you get back out in here towards Jacksonville along the I-10 corridor from, we'll say, Greenville, Florida over to Jacksonville. That's an area that we could see ice concerns mix in more than this model projects. But either way, just crazy totals showing up on the models here. And speaking of that ice, yeah, you want to know why the NAM doesn't have as much snow? This is why. It shows ice instead, nearly half an inch of ice accretion in Tallahassee from the NAM overnight. That, again, probably overdone a little bit, but you get the point here. This is probably a little bit better map to look at, the more high-resolution version, but either way, shows a corridor of heavy icing, nearly half an inch. Folks, that's more than enough to make travel impossible, bring down trees, power lines, and all sorts of things. So again, something that we are absolutely going to watch. Now let's move it up to the Carolinas, latest high-resolution rapid refresh model, really upping the totals in Columbia, Augusta, Macon. I'll tell you, I drew a map the other day on Twitter, or X, by the way. If you don't already follow me there, go ahead and do so. Link in the description. I post very often on there with weather maps and updates. But this area in Florence, Columbia, Augusta, Macon, I had this circled a couple days ago, and I said, that's the place. You know what, let me actually draw it even better. I'll even include Fayetteville in it. I said, this was the place to be if you want an all-snow, beautiful snow event without mixing. A day or two ago, that forecast looked like it might be in trouble, but now this is the HRR model. All right, you see 2 inches in Columbia, 2.5 in Augusta, 2.5 in Macon, 4 in Florence. Check out the NAM in that same area. It's the same thing. So I think forecast confidence is bumped up significantly for the Midlands of South Carolina into the PD and back down into South Central Georgia for a significant snow and ice event. Now, mainly snow in this area. Again, the ice, though, could be at the coast. You want to know why the NAM shows nothing here in Myrtle Beach, Charleston, and Savannah? That's because it's instead showing sleet and freezing rain mixing with the snow, which would be a problem. Now, the HRR, the other model, doesn't show that so much. You can see it's an all-snow event at the coast, and again would be a historic kind of snow with half a foot sprinkled in there through portions of the low country of South Carolina. Right now, my forecast, I'm going to stick to 2 to 4 inches of snow and ice in here, but areas right along the beaches, if you're right on the shoreline in Charleston, Myrtle Beach, along the Grand Strand, we'll have to watch to see how much ice mixes in, especially for areas Georgetown, Murrells Inlet, southbound towards Savannah and Charleston. Probably going to see more of a mixing issue with this storm system. Areas like the upstate, Atlanta, and kind of areas back along I-85, again, a tough forecast. The NAM paints big snow in there, maybe upwards of an inch in Greenville, maybe an inch or two in Rock Hill, an inch or two in Atlanta. The HRR, absolutely nothing. So it's going to be a battle of the ages. Like I said, down south, I think the reality is somewhere in between. I think the NAM footprint on snow could be right, but I think it's probably more around half an inch here along I-85. And then you start getting to those 1 to 3 inch totals once you get down towards Columbia, just south of Rock Hill, into Lawrence, Newberry, Aiken, and areas like that, and then down towards the Augusta area. So that's the latest snowfall map in here. Talk about ice. Again, a concern down into South Georgia and the low country of South Carolina. Really, Charleston Point southbound could creep up into Murrells Inlet and Georgetown, like I mentioned. But this would be a huge ice problem down here on the NAM. The HRR model, though, just shows all snow. So it's going to be interesting. I'm probably going to go analyze some balloon launches here in a second and see what we're seeing in Charleston right now in the atmosphere, compare that to models. I'll try to post that on Twitter, so definitely stay tuned for that. Again, go ahead and follow me on there. But you get the point. Difficult forecast. Either way, a high-impact winter storm about to unfold through South Carolina, Georgia, and North Carolina. Not out of the woods either. Big uptrend in the forecast here, even into Southeast Virginia, Virginia Beach, down to Raleigh, Fayetteville, Jacksonville, Wilmington, and Greenville, North Carolina. Even the Elizabeth City area, these forecast totals have bumped up. This is the HRR model. Again, more of a snow event, and I think that's about right. We likely won't deal with ice in North Carolina, so anything that falls from the sky going to very much so probably be that nice fluffy snow. Now, maybe a little bit of ice or sleet mixing in down towards Jacksonville, Wilmington, but by the time you get to Fayetteville, Raleigh, Greenville, yeah, this is going to be a beautiful snow. That's the HRR. What about the NAM? Same thing, same totals, just shifts it even inland a little bit more. Charlotte, I talked about potential rush hour chaos. Yeah, if the NAM's right, an 1.5 inches of snow, that's more than enough to cause big problems at rush hour. Places like the Triad, Greensboro, basically nothing in the forecast right now for many meteorologists. I don't blame them, but we get the higher end solution and you're in trouble right around rush hour. Greenville, Spartanburg, same story. Raleigh, same story. Fayetteville, same story. All these cities got to be careful if we hit the higher end on this forecast. So that's kind of what we'll see, or what we're seeing there out of those models. And let's briefly talk about the Northeast, because I don't want to forget about y'all. Or use guys, maybe is probably a better term to use if we're talking about the Northeast. Lake effect snow on the way, a big lake effect band continuing into the Tug Hill. We've got lake effect snow in Michigan, some light lake effect bands even kind of working through portions of the Ohio Valley into Ontario, seeing some. And then with that northern extent getting closer on the latest model guidance, areas of the southern Delmarva could see some light snow out of this event overnight tonight into tomorrow. Not a guarantee, not very likely, but something to monitor. Here we go, early tomorrow morning, even a little bit of light snow trying to get into the Cape there. The heaviest snow, though, likely to be just offshore. But should the trends continue even more, maybe some light snow could accumulate in southern Jersey, out in the Cape, even, like I said, into the southern Delmarva. But other than that, lake effect snow continues into tomorrow morning, pictured below, or pictured next to me, I guess, and just kind of continues with even a little bit of a clipper system swinging on through by overnight Wednesday into Thursday. Snowfall total forecast up here. Latest from the National Weather Service, high in snowfall through western Michigan out of this lake effect areas along the shoreline, half a foot or so going to be pretty likely, even some snow into the UP. And then you see these lighter totals, that's from that little clipper that could work on through tomorrow afternoon. But the big time snow totals in the western shores of the UP and then into the Northeast. Yeah, talk about big snow. We're freaking out in the south over a couple of inches. The Tug Hill going to get 2 feet plus just over the next 2 days as that lake effect machine continues to crank up. Also there into the Buffalo area, pretty significant snow, upwards of half a foot to a foot in and around the city potentially. All right, final thing we'll talk about. Let's take a look at what's next. And by the time we get to tomorrow, these video formats are going to be completely different because it's going to be a whole new kind of pattern to talk about. Here's our current ongoing snow system. You can kind of see that chance for big snow that we're dealing with in the deep south. Well, what's next? So here's some lake effect. Here's a little bit of a clipper system by later this week. And then we get some more northern stream energy potentially by this weekend. And then the next real signal I'm watching is about a week or so from now. You see this uptick in snowfall potential through the mid-Atlantic and Ohio Valley, even into the Tennessee Valley. Yeah, the chance again for maybe another area of low pressure to try to override some cold air left over on the northern side. And that could be a little bit better for places like Tennessee, Kentucky, North Carolina, Virginia, into West Virginia. We'll wait and see and monitor the model trends. Alrighty, folks, that's all I got for you. Again, go ahead, like the video, subscribe, hit the bell for the latest notifications. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe, stay informed, stay weather aware. Thanks, Snow, and I'll see you all next time.